Hello, and welcome back to the Simply Lili Podcast. I'm your host, Lily, and today's conversation is one that I believe is going to touch a lot of people's hearts. It's something where it took me a lot to put it together, and I'm speaking also from a place of myself going through this. And I felt that I talk to so many people, and I see a lot of friends that are basically always somehow or another saying what we're going to talk about today. So, we're talking about family, we're talking about distance, and we're talking about protecting our peace while still grieving relationships we thought would last forever. And you know what? Honestly, this episode is for the people who actually feel confused by disconnection. The people that are asking, these are questions that I had asked myself. How did we even get here? Why are families falling apart? Why is there so many fractured families and so many fractured relationships? Why are so many families there now? And it's not something that we've seen so much in the past. And we ask ourselves, should I keep trying? And the big question is, when is enough enough? Some of us are dealing with silence from people we truly love. Some of us are navigating the no contact, and I'm saying that in air quotes. And some of us are trying to heal from toxic patterns. And others, unfortunately, are stuck somewhere in the middle, just wanting peace without completely giving up on the people they care about. So, this is a big one. Today, we're going to unpack all of it with honesty, faith, wisdom, and intentionality, because that's what this season is about: intentionality and alignment. So, wherever you are, whether you're driving, cleaning, working, or just sitting quietly with your coffee, I'm going to thank you in advance for spending this moment with me. Let's get started. So, let's talk about the reality of family disconnection. It's the family, the estrangement is becoming so much more common than many people realize. And on a real note, I'm actually going through this with actually two of my children, and it wasn't by choice. I don't know where things went wrong. Not that things have always been perfect, because there's no perfect parent, there's no perfect children, there's no perfect family, there's nothing that's perfect but God. But what I'm saying is that sometimes life be lifing, and no one takes accountability for what's going on in their life, and then they find that one person that they can just that's their trigger, that's their everything that's gone wrong, and it's because of this, and it's because of that. But see, that's not the true reason behind it, because a lot of people don't realize that are we are we literally having no contact with family? Is it part of your healing? Or is it literally like part of your avoiding? I read this thing in YouGov, and it says that millions of people are walking around carrying silent grief. And that's and what's difficult is that family disconnection doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes there's just no explanation, there's no final conversation. And like I was saying before, there's actually no accountability. It's just that distance. And I think that's what hurts the most, because if we think about it, when someone passes away, there's mourning. But when someone is still alive and emotionally present, That's a different type of pain. You question yourself, and I've done this myself. Did I do something wrong? And I'm that type that if I did something wrong, tell me I did something wrong. Don't block me. Don't cancel me. Tell me. Don't tell everybody else she did this or she's like that. Tell me. Because if you don't tell me, I can't fix it. And that's me taking accountability. But when you turn around and you go on silence, you're not taking accountability for what's wrong. And personally, I believe that in some situations, avoidance has just become normalized. Um, Not every situation is abuse. Not every disagreement deserves a permanent separation. And sometimes people avoid those hard conversations because the accountability feels uncomfortable. And this is where it comes into play where when the time goes on longer and longer and longer that you continue to have that separation, it's harder to come back to fix it because now no one wants to take accountability. And if the first one who doesn't know what's going on takes the first step, you see? You see what I mean? Now she's trying to come out and fix things right. Where do we start? And one of the things that I personally know, because I personally experienced it, social media has made cutting people off a cultural feeling empowering without discussing the emotional consequences that follow. Now, let me be more clear. There's situations where stepping away is by far very necessary. Like if there's abuse, manipulation, repeated disrespect, emotional harm, and just constant chaos, you absolutely have the right to protect your mental health. But that comes into question, are we just having an argument or is there a disagreement? What are the boundaries and what are the limitations? But I also think we've lost, how can I say this? We've lost some of the art of repair because one thing I'm learning, and I've learned this in therapy, repairing requires humility. Repairing requires listening. Repairing requires emotional maturity. And sadly, many people were never taught how to resolve conflict in healthy ways. And some of us families never talked about conflict. We just move on and we let it go. It goes underneath the rug. And it can be painful and it can also be disturbing, but we have to do what's best for us at this point. You know, I got some scripture because it comes right into where I'm going to lead on to. Psalm 46 verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Sometimes we read this scripture only during moments of stress, but I think this verse speaks deeply to family conflict too. And I'm only saying that because it hits home for me. Be still, not reactive, not impulsive, not constantly chasing answers from people who refuse to communicate. Because stillness allows clarity. Because when emotions are loud, discernment becomes difficult. And also, sometimes we keep knocking on doors that God is asking us to step away from, y'all. And sometimes we walk away too quickly from relationships that still have room for healing. That's why stillness matters. Stillness helps us ask, am I protecting my peace or avoiding discomfort? I'm going to say that again. Stillness helps us ask, am I protecting my peace or avoiding discomfort? Am I setting boundaries or building walls? Am I acting from wisdom or from pain? Because there's a difference. And one thing about all those things that I just mentioned is that balance is everything, which leads me into how much should we tolerate? That is the hard question. How much should we tolerate from family? Because a lot of us grew up hearing, blood is thicker than water, and family is family. You only get one mother, one father, one sibling. While family matters deeply, your mental health matters too. We can't keeping we can't keep ourselves in a repeated cycle that continuously goes on with no results. I mean, it's like, you know, insanity doing the same thing over and over again and not getting any results. You cannot you cannot continuously sacrifice your emotional well-being to maintain appearances. If every interaction has leaves you drained, if boundaries are constantly violated, if disrespect becomes normalized, and if manipulation is repeated without any remorse, then yes, by all means, distance may be the necessary thing. But see, here's something important. And this is something that I've been putting into practice, and I've been applying boundaries a lot to my own life. See, boundaries are not punishment, boundaries are information. They communicate this behavior is harming me. See, healthy people may not always like boundaries, but they can respect them. Toxic toxic people, I think often see boundaries as a rejection because they benefit from your lack of them. And I believe that's why there's just so many people struggling when someone finally says no more. But I also believe we have to be careful not to weaponize therapy language because not every disagreement is toxic. Not every imperfect parent is narcissistic. Not every conflict requires permanent no contact. You see, some relationships just need space. Some need counseling. Some need time. And some do truly need separation. You see, and I'll say this wholeheartedly, wisdom is knowing the difference. And that takes me where you think, who suffers the most from no contact? One thing research continues to show is that estrangement deeply impacts both sides emotionally. And I read this in Psychology Today. It's just a very small portion of it. I'm going to read it to you. Why estrangement occurs. The factors cited most often as leading to sibling relationship breakdown include mismatched expectations about family roles and relationships, clash of personality or values, emotional abuse, parental favoritism, traumatic family event, or a traumatic event. The factors cited that often most as leading to adult children estranging themselves from parents include what I had said, like emotional abuse, mismatched expectation about family roles, um, issues relating to mental health. And if you think about it, honestly, everyone suffers in different ways. Parents suffer. Yes, we do. That's one thing I don't believe that our children, even as adults, believe. We are not perfect. A lot of us, we had upbringings that we've actually navigated in our own life that we didn't want to do like we were raised. And to us, it was better for our children. And we do suffer. We don't get angry. And by far, you don't need to punish us because you have created your own life now. And I believe that by you creating your own life, you set your own expectations. You set your own intentions that then you have your own alignment in your own life. But that's not always the situation. We have children, they suffer, the siblings suffer, grandchildren suffer. But I honestly believe that many times the silent sufferers are the people in the middle. Those are the nieces, the nephews, the great nieces, the great nephews, the siblings that are forced to choose sides. And that's the sad part of all this. The family members grieving relationships they didn't even break. And often the unresolved pain quietly spreads through generations. And these aren't even cycles, these are just things that happen. And there's this, from what I've understood, this no contact is literally a trend. I've seen where there's therapists that are recommending no contact, but that doesn't fix anything. That's just avoiding the situation. How much longer do you continue to have no contact? And what happens when somebody passes away and you're like, oh my God, I should have said something, I should have called, you know, I never got to say what I really wanted to say. We need to realign ourselves and realign our thoughts. And that, you know, that tells me that that's something very important, that people do miss each other. I miss my estrangement. I'm not my estrangement. I miss my family and I miss certain individuals, but I cannot compromise my peace because you're dealing with something within yourself that you're avoiding, but you're not coming to terms with, that you're not bringing it to the surface to solve. Even when pride is involved, even when silence lasts years, even when healing feels impossible, I think one of the saddest things today is that many people are emotionally suffering while pretending that they're completely fine. Because protecting my peace became easier to say than I'm heartbroken. So just just think about that. Let me ask you this. Does the no contact help me or make things worse? This answer isn't in black and white. For some people, no contact truly does save their mental health, especially in situations like I had mentioned. They're involving abuse, addiction, manipulation, violence, or severe emotional harm. And those experiences should never be minimized. But in other situations, the no contact can sometimes freeze the conflict instead of resolving it. And silence does not automatically equal healing. Sometimes people grow, sometimes they reflect, sometimes distance creates perspective. But sometimes avoidance becomes permanent because nobody wants to take the first vulnerable step. Apology is always difficult. Apologizing, not everybody takes accountability, not everybody does it, but it is difficult. Owning mistakes is difficult, and changing patterns is difficult. But with that being said, healing requires discomfort. And there was something in the New York Post that I had just read. It was one survey found that Americans prefer distancing themselves over resolving conflict directly. This is what it said in the New York Post. 38% of Americans have gone no contact with a friend or family member in the last year, according to a new study. The survey of 2,000 Americans revealed that young people are more likely than older groups to have gone no contact with a loved one in the last year. Now, check this out. Gen Z, 60%. Millennials, 50%. Gen X, 38%. And baby boomers, 20%. And then it says here in the article, investigating the why behind this trend, survey respondents' top reason for going no contact with someone was because that person was disrespectful to them. That was 36%. Other primary motivations cited in the study include that the relationship negatively impacted their mental health. That was 29%. And then there was that the other person was too negative in general, 27%. Now, what is it about that that cannot be fixed? What is it about that that cannot be talked about? Now, don't get me wrong. If it's something that you have been experiencing forever and you just don't get no results and it's the same thing over and over again, then I get it. But honestly, there's a lot about the emotional exhaustion people are carrying right now because we live in a culture that is overwhelmed, it's overstimulated, it's emotionally tired, and constantly online. People are burning out relationally. That's what I've came up with. See, when do we know it's time to step back? I'm going to go right into that. I think this is where intentional living becomes essential because intentionality means you stop making emotional decisions based only on temporary feelings. Because you ask, what is this relationship, I should say, producing in my life? Is it peace, fear, growth, confusion, constant anxiety, emotional instability? You have to evaluate fruit. If you continuously lose yourself trying to save a relationship, something's off. If your nervous system never feels safe, if every interaction destroys your emotional stability, if there's no accountability, no effort, no respect, stepping back may be necessary. And stepping back does, does not always mean hatred. See, sometimes it simply means I need room to breathe. Sometimes, uh, I'm going to say it, sometimes distance is temporary. Sometimes permanent. But either way, it should come from wisdom, not revenge. Think about it. As you know, and as I've mentioned, this season is about intentionality and alignment. So we have to keep aligning our lives with purpose. I've been thinking a lot lately about how precious time is. We spend so much energy waiting for people to become who we need them to be. Meanwhile, our purpose sits on the back burner. And here's the truth. Whatever God placed inside of you still matters. Your healing matters, your dreams matter, your calling matters, and of course, above all, your peace matters. What is sitting on the back burner in your life right now? Whatever is sitting in the back burner, Let it simmer until it's fully cooked. Don't abandon yourself while waiting for reconciliation. You got to keep building. You got to keep healing. You got to keep growing. And you got to keep becoming. Yes, like I said before, I'm experiencing this. But that does not put me in a position where I'm not going to do anything. I have to keep going. No, let me rephrase that. It's not that I have to keep going. I want to keep going because I am going to stand still and I am going to continuing to work on myself. I am continuing to do things. I am continuing with my purpose because sometimes misery loves company. Okay. And sometimes things are happening in other people's worlds. Like I said, that has nothing to do with you. But for somehow or another, it comes right back at you. Don't be anyone's punching bag. It can't happen because I think about what's actually going on in my situation and I think over, let me rephrase that. I thought, because I don't keep thinking about it like I did before, I did the best I could. And remember, tell me all the good things I did. Don't tell me all the bad things I do. Thank me for all the good things and how appreciative you are. Why is it that everything that comes out is all bad things? And some of the bad things really were just part of life. And I hope I made sense with what I just said because I don't know where that came from, but it just came out. But we have to not let things burden us to a point where it burns us out. And like I said, because no matter what is happening around us, life continues moving forward. And one thing that really sits heavy in my heart, again, we truly have more days behind us than we do in front of us. That's not meant to sound depressing. It's meant to wake us up. Like, are you really going to keep up with this? Where you've tried to work things out, you've tried to do things, but then things are good, and then something happens on that side, and you're paying the consequences. I believe mental health is very important. I suffer from PTSD very badly. I have it very well managed. And I say that wholeheartedly because my faith in God is number one. My belief, everything is number one. And as long as my faith is strong, I know where I'm coming from and I know where I'm going. And with me dealing with PTSD, and for those of y'all who have been listening to my podcast in the last 2 seasons, I had a son that was brutally murdered. He was 16. I do have PTSD from that. And then that is something that I've had to deal with, but it took me a long time to deal with it because life was lifing. And honestly, I didn't really have the time to deal with things, but I never took it out on anybody. I forgave who had to be forgiven because if I didn't, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And that also took a long time. But I didn't take it to where I cut people off and I didn't talk to anybody. I knew that I couldn't fix the past and I never can bring him back. But at the same time, all I know is that there is no perfect person. And we need to take what we go through and make it better. And time will make it better. And unfortunately, in this day and age, this is how things are being dealt with. And life is short. Live it intentionally. Stop postponing joy. Stop shrinking yourself. Stop carrying guilt for choosing peace. That's a no-no. And I've done that and I'm not doing that anymore. Stop abandoning your own future to fix what only God can heal. And I've learned you can love people dearly and still choose distance. You can pray for people and still protect your mental health. You can leave the door unlocked emotionally without standing in a burning house. Think about it. So if you're listening today and you're grieving a broken family relationship, I want you to know this. You're allowed to feel conflicted. You're allowed to miss people and still maintain boundaries. You're allowed to heal. And if reconciliation is possible, may it come through humility, accountability, honesty, and love. But if it isn't, may you still build a beautiful life, because your story is not over simply because a relationship changed. And maybe today's lesson is this: peace is not the absence of pain. Peace is knowing you did your best while still honoring yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me here on the Simply Lili podcast. If this episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who might need encouragement right now. There's so many of us going through this. And remember, protect your peace, but never lose your compassion. Always keep that little level of open communication. Blessings to everyone. Until the next time, stay intentional, stay grounded, and keep becoming the best version of yourself.